was thinking about, doing the videos and how we're asking our colleagues what's your journey. And so again, I was just thinking about how mysterious CAPS and mental health might seem for people, like they're walking into sort of a black box. And if we can illuminate that at all, or illuminate ourselves of just being, human beings, and it's not the mystery they think it is. It's not magic. So yeah, if people, that's my hope anyway, that maybe people will get some of that, or hear something in the stories, or hear. I think especially because I wish I did career counseling still, but what I love of that is really kind of challenging the way people think about their college journey, in particular, that they're supposed to know what they want for the rest of their life at 19. And we know that that's absurd and crazy, but but that is what so many people are sitting with, and it causes so much angst.
Yes.
And so just that's why I also like that journey language, and us talking to colleagues, is maybe people can see how you sort of get carried by things into the next thing, and it's not, and sometimes, and a lot of times, life has to happen, inspiration has to happen to get you to the place you needed to go, and there was no way to sit down, especially young, when you haven't maybe had experiences, to even know that would be a thing
what you would want to do. And I think the nonlinear journeys, or and even the nonlinear parts of our own experiences, have really not only been interesting to reflect on, but have had lessons in them, right? And so, sitting down and talking to colleagues and learning new things. Oh my gosh, I had no idea you used to do this, or it's like, that's a little interesting nugget that taught them something, probably deepened their compassion, maybe, really made it clear that this was the kinds of work they wanted to do. And I just think that that's more connecting than it is. Like, that's probably more like most people's experiences than the person who comes in undergrad, knows exactly that they're going to be a physician, goes straight through, gets their biology degree, goes, like, that happens for sure. But I think by and large, lots of other people have a journey that sort of, they think looks like this, but actually looks like this. And it's just still as fulfilling and rich, and even more so in a lot of ways. So I really like hearing from our colleagues and learning them in a different way. Because I think also, we probably make assumptions, or even don't maybe slow down enough to just say or think or ask those kinds of like questions. What led you to this, right? It's not asked in an interview or anything like that. Or if it is, we maybe focus on the parts that are not so personal, right? The academic pieces. But it's nice to sort of see, as humans who, were at one point in a college undergrad and faced with all the choices and having to make those, this is how our life journey unfolded. So I agree with you. I think there's something really powerful about that. And I actually pay attention more and get more from those parts. I'm like, oh, wow, didn't know that. Or, that's really cool.
For sure. And I think I've shared with you before, but one of the things that's crystallized for me, particularly in my time at CAPS, is how much I connect to people when I can connect to things about their journey, things that were about inspiration in their journey, about joy in the journey, of how people get inspired, follow passion. That really speaks to me, and is very connecting. And the struggle is hugely important. Is hugely important in what we experience as human beings. But I especially feel very connected in the understanding people's passions and inspirations, and the joy that got them into certain paths, or helped them learn things about themselves. And so I just know that that's something that's really critical for me in terms of feeling attached. And maybe it's the job we do and holding heavy things, but it becomes even more critical to tune into joy than if you also have to frequently occupy a space of sadness and trauma, and the really heavy things, to be really then very mindful of what's joyous in the people around, joyous in the world. And that can sometimes be hard to see, but but try tuning into that, and that's a thing that helps me to stay motivated. So even as we talk about motivation around the podcast, that's why, yes, hope it's helpful, but I start in a place that I know is more connected to joy, because it's also a place I think I can control, if we use that word a little bit more, which is that I can control getting together with a person whose company I really enjoy, and other
Mhm.
people whose company that I know that I enjoy or that I'm curious about, and that I can have some say over and feel a sense of appreciation and joy in that. And then hopefully there are other things that come off of that.
Yeah. I really liked something that you said, made me think about the importance of even balance, because yes, life is hard and things are traumatic. And I hope to not say that in a way that is minimizing or dismissive. But I remember kind of, going through a period of time when I was watching kind of like Law and Order and really like crime shows. That's what they're called, like crime dramas. And that my mood and my suspicion around people's motives shifted, because that was my mindset all the time. And the mind is a really powerful thing, Anthony, where I, even as a psychologist, wasn't connecting that. Wow, like you're, you know, yeah, thinking someone's motives are this, or you're being really negative, or you're assuming they're being negative related to all the crime drama I was watching. And, I think that you're right. Sometimes you have to be able to sort of balance that. And especially when we hold really hard things, to then hear about the kind of underbelly of the world and people who maybe are making, dangerous or decisions that are harmful. That's not helpful. That's not going to bring me to a place of peace, or even thinking about the good and the light and the really wonderful things. You know, the quote from Mr. Rogers about there are always helpers. Have you heard that quote?
I
Of like,
haven't, even though, yeah, I definitely want to soak up the documentary on him, and then also Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the actual movie, were some of my favorite things of recent times. So please give me more,
yeah.
Mr. Rogers.
So right around the time I think of maybe 9/11, or even thinking about the most recent kind of racial injustices that occurred this past summer, and thinking about how do you explain what's happening in the world to kids. There's a quote from Mr. Rogers and he says, my mom says that there are always helpers. No matter what's going on in any tragedy, in any hard time, look for the helpers. Instead of focusing on all of the horrible offenses that are going, and that's not to minimize them because they're real, they're happening. But who are the heroes? Who are the people stepping up to help? Who are the people organizing, blood drives and banks, and who are the people kind of celebrating in those moments? And I think that that's a really helpful reminder, similar to what you probably is your nature, is that you're drawn to not just here's the trauma, but where's the joy in that? Is there a way that we connect it more as a nation because of some of those horrific things? Not that we would ever wish that, and not that we need that to connect, but is that a side effect that we can use and that we can appreciate? And so I think that that's just something that, yeah, is helpful to me to think about, finding joy in the small things. Because also I think and I don't know if this is just how we as Americans are conditioned. I think it is, after having traveled. Now that I'm saying it, I think it is. But that we have to have this big major thing to be joyful, right? Like it's got to be a holiday or a vacation or a promotion or something big for me to really pull out the joy and just really be fully present and happy in that. And I think part of what you and I think resonate with and have experienced is that, especially when you see people who have little to no material things, but are still celebrating and loving and laughing, and children are just children, no matter where you are in the world, it reminds you that those things aren't what make you joyful, right? That it's underneath that. You got to dig deeper. Because I think sometimes that's what's been hard in this pandemic. It's like, I want to travel, right? Like I have the desire to get away, but how can I still capture what I love about travel, which is the relaxation, the not having to kind of take responsibility of bills and day-to-day things. I can capture some of that if I'm creative without having to travel, right? So yeah, I think I'm cycling back to what you're saying, and just saying that, I think trying to find that balance, looking for moments of joy, you really being drawn to that in people's experience, or I just know you as a friend that that's what excites you. If we're talking about a situation or we're sort of processing, you're the one that will sort of say, are we getting stuck in the mire, or are we sort of overly focusing on this, and are we missing this piece? And I always appreciate that because yeah, I think it's easy to kind of get into the, the hard and especially with what we do, we're trained to kind of go into the hard and sit with the heavy. But I appreciate you kind of being like, and what else? And is there, so yeah, just appreciating you and appreciating this topic today because yeah, I'm at the point of the pandemic where I'm kind of over it, right? And so needing a reminder of what brings me joy, especially going into a weekend, is really going to be nice because I can actually live some of these things. I think is a timely message.
Yeah, really appreciate you. Thank you for that, of like what you shared about me and what you appreciate. And it's one of the things I appreciate in, interesting how I've absorbed life experiences. And one of the things that we've both, I think, really absorbed is being psychologists, becoming psychologists, and going through my program and being a counseling psychologist, a focus on strengths is a part of this, and why I think that counseling psychology spoke to me in a lot of ways, of that idea of, yes, there can be all of these experiences that are really painful and hurtful, and people can be struggling, and they can still have a lot of resilience, and they can still have a lot of strengths. They have a lot of things that are wonderful about them. And so we don't necessarily just heal from things we might think are broken, but actually what can help heal that is already the things that are strengths, that are already wonderful, about us. And so I try to hold on to pieces of that, and not
Well,
have it be all.
your graduate school would be proud because you are definitely, yeah, living those values and what you were taught. And I think that anybody who knows you and works with you, and even probably knows you in your personal life, I can't imagine this ends at work. That's just who you are. It's the lens I think that you see things with, which is strength based, and not just wanting to sort of unbalance, acknowledge the hard and heavy, but what are some resilient pieces? What are some, some really positive things? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And even just again, I love to connect to the joy. And I think one of the ways this comes up, my mom has been a Girl Scout leader for many years, and it's a thing that brings her just so much pleasure, so much meaning. But my mom can also be a little maybe perfectionist, and wants everything to kind of go a certain way. And she can get caught on at times the way something didn't happen or go as well. And when I'm hearing stories about things she's doing with Girl Scouts, I find if I get too much of that, it'll be hard to connect to what she's sharing, because I'm sitting with the question of, why are you doing this? Because I'm not hearing, for me anyway, what would motivate. And
Uh,
so it's been important to share that. And now I think we've settled into a little bit of a place where I've shared that with her, and she can share the joy. And then to get to hear that and see her be a little bit like I would imagine she was as a little girl, to see that joy come out in what she's doing. And I think she's really making a big difference in the lives of young people. And so I just really love getting to connect to her in that way around the passion, and how that's motivating. So I was thinking of that as you were talking. I also wanted to ask you a question, because I think you just said something that hits me as really profound, even though it might have sounded small in terms of, travel other countries. We maybe wait for the big things
mhm.
and miss the small things. I'm wondering what you've noticed about in your work, with clients. We often have people come in and say to us, you ask, what do you want from therapy? And they'll say, I want to be happy.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering how you work with that, how you work with that goal, and how you talk to clients about happiness and joy, and what you even notice gets in people's
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Um, one thing I really like to do is demystify happiness as all or nothing, right? I want to be happy. Well, what does that really mean? Because if you take that for on its face value, you either are or you aren't. And I usually don't experience it to be that there could be moments, even if I'm in a really hard situation. So for example, I lost a dear friend of mine. Oh, I guess it's been 3 months now. And that grieving her loss and thinking about, all of the missed opportunities and plans we had has been really hard. And so, yes, I'm actively grieving, but there have been happy moments in there, right? And so it's not that you have a state of being and an emotion, a feeling that sort of you either are or you aren't, that there can be a real range. And so helping clients kind of, deconstruct what happy means to them, and then look at ways that even in their everyday life, they're doing things that bring them pleasure, that bring them joy. And most are surprised to even know that they're doing things. They sort of dismiss, I'm guilty of this too, right? They dismiss the things that if someone sort of holds a mirror to it and says, wait a minute, you just told me that last weekend you ran a half marathon and that was something you had been training for. And they'll just sort of say it offhand. Oh yeah, I ran this. Whoa, and so sometimes I think, again, we're waiting for those big, huge moments that Hallmark and media, I'm not totally blaming all of that on it. I think part of it is that we really get conditioned that there's going to be this, build up to this big moment. It's why people feel disappointed sometimes with like birthdays, in that, all of this excitement around this day. And why don't I feel any different? Why don't I feel, 30 or 40? Why don't I feel different? Because we've made it up. There's so many moments, even leading up to that big day, that were amazing, that were happy, that were great. But you missed them because you were waiting for that moment of celebration of this big, thing you were. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Anthony. I'm going to come back to your question, but to me, this illustrates it. And maybe you were. It's kind of like the day after Christmas, right? For those of you who celebrate it, and if you don't, if there are other holidays that this fits, but the build up to Christmas is everything. It is everything. It's the excitement, it's the anticipation, it's all the stuff, the sensory pieces. And then sometimes, especially when I was younger, not so much now because I think I have a different relationship with that holiday, but I would feel let down. Like, that was so great. And now it's just like life is back to normal. Right. And so one of the things I think cultivating happiness kind of on a day to day or even moment to moment basis is that you're not waiting, you're not having, because leading up to December 25th, there were lots of moments of happiness, but in my mind, nothing trumped Christmas Day. And some of that, there's nostalgia, there's reasons for that. Right? It's a culture, and so I get that. But that's just to illustrate that sometimes we make things out to be this big, big event. I'm going to be happy when I graduate and get that job. And then lots of people do that same exact thing and they feel no different. And then they start to have this negative, what's wrong with me? Everything I've wanted, I'm finally getting, and I don't feel happy. It's because happiness, as we know as psychologists, and hopefully folks are starting to learn, it doesn't come from things. It doesn't come from achieving things. You can certainly feel happy in what you've done and in those moments, but joy that sustains you, that's not the recipe for it. So yeah, I think clients a lot, and even if they don't lead with that, you can get to that as you're talking to them and you're telling, tell me about your life. Tell me about this week. Oh, and then they'll just sort of rattle off these things, and there are amazing nuggets in there, or things that like you could really pull out and say, oh my God, you did, but it's just as though that's not really the big thing, because that's just nothing. It's not, I didn't go anywhere. I haven't achieved anything, or I don't have a partner, or all of these things that we tell ourselves connect to happiness. And that's just not the truth. So yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but
there was no particular, but I think you circled back to what you were talking about noticing, at least for me, and noticing what we might term the small things. And
Yeah.
I resonate with what you're talking about, because you just said you could ask someone, and if you heard about their day, you might be thinking, wow, tell me about, wow, that, but they've run over it. It's sort of, well, that's expected, or it
Mhm.
was just supposed to. But if something didn't go right, however small, it would be, oh my God, the toilet paper was out and I can't cope, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to focus. And so you lose somehow when it's these small things, it's taken for granted. That was just supposed to happen. That means nothing. I really got to get
Mhm.
over here. And so it's
Yeah.
not sort of tuning into all of these things that could be really good. And then, but if any small, thing that might be termed negative happens,
Yeah.
then
Yes.
that's everything, and it means everything. And I know some of that could be ways we might be wired to tune into threats and those
Mm.
kind of things. But still, that's also where mindfulness and other kinds of habits, we can learn
Yes.
to tune in more to those smaller things, to not take those for granted, like you were saying, and that we can hold multiple
Yeah.
failing states and things at the same time or over time. So like you said, you can be grieving, and you could have a moment of joy in seeing your child face and seeing them laugh, or seeing them. And so that can be true as well. And so really, it sounds like for you, um, breaking down myths about happiness and
Mhm.
reconstructing what that could look like, and also that we can't stay in that forever, because that's not realistic, because that's really not living life, and that there are ups and downs and just different emotions where we may be pretty content in a moment. We might not say I'm like over the moon with energy and joy, but can be pretty content.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think where we sometimes see this, I know I can speak for clients I've worked with, is academic. Clients can really tie their happiness to a grade. And so maybe miss, yeah, I got a 90 on that assignment in maybe chemistry, or no matter what the course is, but here I am thinking that's amazing, and it's like, yeah, but I didn't get a hundred, or I can't, and so there is a way that I think as humans we tend to think about the missing instead of celebrating the kind of what we got. And so there are times that I have to really push and challenge folks, particularly our high achieving folks. If you're listening, you know who you are, who want an A plus, or who are used to that 4.0. So a 3.6 is just, oh my gosh, when it's like, also there's no context, but then also just not even appreciating that. Do you want to have a collegiate experience where you have a 4.0 but you've done nothing else? Or is it okay that that semester you were really interested in being in this student org, and so that meant you had to reprioritize, and maybe you got a B instead of an A, right? And so it's just really challenging, like you said, preconceived myths and breaking down what does happiness mean. It's not a state of, and people sometimes think, especially in this world we live in with social media, they see a snapshot of someone's life and assume that that's kind of how they always are. And I have to constantly remind students, nobody's posting their hard moments. Nobody's posting, when they wake up with bags under their eyes, or they've got disappointing news, or they're struggling today because their mental health is, just struggling. They're posting and they're showing the moments in their life that are sparkly clean, and they're airbrushing those. And so I think usually students will laugh a little and they'll say, yeah, you're right. I realize, if they kind of think on it, I realize I'm comparing myself to a snapshot of someone's life. They look so happy. Well, yeah, for that moment, I'm sure we could snapshot your life. And so that is something that I've actually had someone do, is if you had a reel of all of the moments, what would they look like? But they got to be day-to-day moments, not the big moments. What would your reel look like, right? Your 9-picture reel of happiness. And that just helps them kind of rethink about, oh, okay, yeah, there are moments. I was petting my dog, and she was running around in circles and that really made me smile. Boom, there it is. That's a picture, right? And so it just helps people remember a lot of things, that social media is not real. And I say that as a social media user. Those of you who've listened know that I'm trying to get Anthony on Instagram. I have let off of that, but I have not forgotten. But as a social media user, I think the difference from when I, as a older adult, older, still young adult, uses it versus my maybe teen or early adulthood cousin, is that I recognize that it's not real, or what the parts of it that are real are the shiny, cleaned up pieces. And so I think that young people, particularly the millennials who have grown up, do start to base their joy off of what experience can I do that I can then post for others to validate. And I can tell you the moments in my life that have made me the most joyous, the most happy, will never make it on a reel somewhere, right? And so it's just helping. It's pushing against, I feel like sometimes we're pushing against a mountain, Anthony, because social media is a real thing, and it is a real stressor for a lot of our students who have trouble enjoying their life, their day to day, because they're comparing it to someone who they don't know, they have no connection with, but who's presenting their life as this shiny, cleaned up event.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about also what I think of as you were talking is a manufactured life. I need to do this thing, to post this thing, to get these reactions.
Yeah.
That's too manufactured. That's not the process of life, of not knowing, of serendipity, of not knowing what will happen. That will be pretty incredible. It's too planned. It's too controlled, and I love a plan. And love an itinerary when going places, and still there can be these amazing moments that weren't part of that, the most joyous moments in a lot of ways. And that's what I hear as you're saying, that if that's what the idea is supposed to be, then really it's all about getting it on there and getting whatever people give you of somehow being popular. Or it's not about what actually was maybe in the photo, what the actual experience in the moment was. And so no wonder there's being left with an emptiness.
Yes.
And even it seems to go to what we see here all the time in our job and on our campus, is this idea that people are looking around saying, well, I'm the only one struggling because no one else looks like they're struggling. And it's sort of, how can you look at someone and tell what they're going through? You mean that they're wearing pants and they have on it can't tell you the whole story of people. And social media, I think, would be similar to that, in that it doesn't tell the whole story. It may tell part of a story that may be partly true, but it can't tell all of it. And it's similar just watching people walk around on a campus like UNC, that you can't look at them and say, oh, you look what I would judge as beautiful, you have all the things I'd want, and so that means you're doing swimmingly, it's all easy for you, and I'm the only one struggling. And you can't tell that. There's so much context to us and to life and to what's that just can't tell you that. So I was having those thoughts as you were talking.
Yeah, I love this conversation. And as we're talking, I feel the need to kind of share things that are bringing me joy currently, have brought joy through this pandemic. And something that I really, really, you and I connect with, is just TV watching and movies and things like that. And so, of course, we haven't been able to go to the theater, but I've really caught some amazing movies and series during this pandemic. And one that I hope resonates with a lot of y'all is Bridgerton series on Netflix, which I just saw, I think the other day, said it was the most streamed series in Netflix history, with like 82 million streams in the first month of it being out. And so I've already watched it twice. And I love a little about me. I love period pieces. Like, I've watched, Downton Abbey, The Crown, all of the Jane Austen movies stay in heavy rotation in my life. I really like period pieces. But to have a period piece with diversity, with representation, sign me up. So I was already looking forward to it when it dropped. And it didn't let me down. It was really, really great. I can't wait for season 2. I binged it. I gotta share with our listeners. I binged this. I think I watched the entire series in like 2 days. And mind you, we're working. I have a family, so this was like, you know, evenings and early mornings and on breaks. And so it was definitely, I couldn't turn away. It was so good. So yeah, I wanted to share, I want you to share, if you will, maybe a series or a movie or just anything that's been bringing you joy in this pandemic particularly.
Yeah, I'll just echo what you said. I really enjoyed Bridgerton too, and was drawn to it. I don't know if I'd be. I love Downton Abbey, what you mentioned, and The Crown. I don't know if I'd be necessarily. You would think of maybe me as the target audience of Bridgerton, but I did really enjoy it and appreciate it. Like you said, the diversity of seeing, and that really drew me in, and then I could enjoy a lot of the soapy kind of aspects of it that just were a lot of fun. I think there have been a couple things. One is that I really would encourage everyone to see One Night in Miami. This is a movie directed by Regina King, who is just killing the game. She was in Watchmen, which was one of the greatest shows of recent times, and she's just done so much other amazing work. And One Night in Miami is an incredible movie about kind of taking an event that really happened. So it's in real life, it really happened that Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, Muhammad Ali, and Malcolm X were together in Miami at a motel and getting to hang out. No one was there, so no one knows. So the actual dialogue in some of those pieces are fictionalized, but it's really capturing this moment in time and capturing the the differences and the different viewpoints that could come from four black men, and the idea that there is not one. And I was saying this actually yesterday, of what I loved about being in the brother to brother group that I do with black men, of that there is, we can often get this idea sometimes from society that there's this one box, there's this one image or way to be a black man. And what was really wonderful and powerful about One Night in Miami is that you can see that that's not true. And there can be these overlaps in places people agree, but also disagree about what it means to fight for equal rights, civil rights, those sorts of things, and still care about each other, support each other, that idea of black male brotherhood. And so that was just a uh, very powerful movie for me, and brought me a lot of joy. I love history, and so just to kind of think about that brought me a lot of joy and felt like a real celebration in certain ways. And so that's one thing that I'll mention from a movie perspective. And then also thinking about joy, and I think Pixar has brought a lot of joy to millions over the years, but getting to watch Soul with my family over the holidays, and we all really just loved that movie. And again, just thinking about diversity and representation and what it means to have a black jazz player as a central character in Soul, but then beneath that, what Soul is going for and what Soul is saying. And I definitely encourage listeners to watch that, because it relates directly to things we've been talking about today. About, we're touching on joy, purpose, meaning, how those things are connected, how expectation can maybe rob us of staying in the moment, and joy, complexity. And so I just thought that it was amazing. And one of the things I appreciate most about Pixar is that it may seem aimed to kids, but actually there's a level that children can enjoy it at, and there's a level that adults can usually enjoy a Pixar movie at. And I think Soul's no different. And so I just really appreciated that movie and the ideas presented in it, and how I think it speaks to some aspects of what we've been talking about today. So that movie was really incredible in a lot of ways for me, and brought me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, you're speaking my language. Both of those were great, great, great films, Anthony. And I want to cycle back to One Night in Miami because, I also want to remind our listeners, you don't have to be Black to appreciate that movie, right? It's a movie. Yes, there are 4 Black men and the themes are around, it's during, civil rights, and they're talking about ways to sort of further Black folks, but there's a level of camaraderie, of feeling seen, and, all of us, especially if you have friend groups, probably have a person that you can connect to. One person who's very vocal and who's out there, and maybe is the kind of go-getter, and then somebody who may have their own quiet way. They still care, but they do things in a different way. And so I think it's universally appealing. Not to mention great music. I want the soundtrack when it comes out. Leslie Odom, Jr. from Hamilton plays Sam Cooke and kills it. I mean, he absolutely nails that role. So I just wanted to be, sometimes I think people might hear a movie and think, oh, well, that wouldn't, no matter who you are, I think you will find something that you can appreciate from One Night in Miami. And it's a fun film. There are really moments of like, you're going to laugh, it's a really good movie. And Soul, similarly, yes, that my 3-year-old can watch it and get something very different that I watch and get from it. And just really appreciating both of those movies. So movies have been doing joyful things for me. Also, I was sharing with Anthony before we started this podcast, just how yesterday, if you're in the North Carolina area, we got some snow. And it was really cool because we're just so not used to snow that it's a big event. So, my daughter's preschool was delayed a couple of hours, which meant I was delayed coming in. And so I had time in the morning. I mean, it was almost like Christmas for her. She woke up, she likes to look outside to check the weather, which normally there's no event, it's just dark. But yesterday there was snow, and to see her eyes light up and say, snow, my gosh, can we go make a snowman? Was just really, really, it brought me a lot of joy. I was cold because it was the one thing it was yesterday was freezing cold. But just to see her, and kids have a different level of tolerance for, I'm convinced their skin is thicker or something, because she could have stayed out there all day. And just to be able to kind of spend the morning, which normally we're very structured because, we got to get her out the house and get her to school and all of that. But to be able to have a little bit of a slower morning, and get her outside and do something a little different, I think she appreciated it too. Because, also I think children are feeling this pandemic in a way that maybe on the other side we're going to get some information about, but she's certainly been asking, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we go to the beach? All of these things. And so being able to yesterday, Anthony, just go out and play in the snow. There wasn't enough snow to make a snowman here in Raleigh, but throwing snowballs at each other and, just having a good time. That brought me a lot of joy. And those are the moments, again, it's not a big thing. It costs nothing, but it was just so filling and fulfilling.
Yeah, it makes me think that children are good to watch as we talk about joy, because children throw themselves into things so full-heartedly, so openly, can appreciate something very, very small of, oh, snow, or it's some kids, oh, I found a stick, and I'm just in my imagination. And it's amazing how much they can sort of be full and open, whereas maybe an adult, that's what I think some of the joy was, not just being with, someone that you really love and value, your own child, but also how her joy allows you to experience joy. Whereas maybe if you were by yourself, you wouldn't think to play in the snow. You would have in your head, adults don't do that. You would think that that's not a place for you to find joy, but why? And who says, and who's watching anyway? And so I think there can be some lessons in kids and how full and open they can throw themselves into things and be interested in things, or show that joy in a way that doesn't maybe come with some of the adult baggage that shuts that down or disrupts some of that don't do that. That's not what adults do. I would look silly. Kids often aren't self-conscious in that way. And so they get to experience that joy more fully. So I was thinking of that as you were sharing. And I was also thinking that it was a moment of joy for me recently. And so I imagine it was even bigger for you. But you shared a very adorable picture of me. I think maybe I shouldn't do this because it might hamper her in fighting crime if they know her secret identity. But you have a superhero in your.
Yes, yes. You're so right about kids and being unhampered by kind of conventional, or even kind of what do people think? Because I mean, look around, especially toddler preschool age. You will see they will go out into stores and they've dressed themselves and they could care less that this orange socks don't go with their, whatever. So yes, we have a superhero that lives here. And what's been really I love when you mentioned earlier, because I don't think you have to have kids to tap into that. I think that it's helpful because it's like kind of ever present. But I remember even being around my little nephews and feeling more playful, more giddy, more the permission to be silly, which sometimes as adults, yeah, whether it's internal or external, we don't express that. We zip that part up. And so, even as she runs around here as a superhero and says, mommy, you're gonna be the monster today, or you put this towel on and you be a superhero too. There's a slight moment, if I'm honest with you, there's a millisecond of me sort of self-judging. Oh my God, I'm gonna put a towel on and fly around. But there's something so light and joyful about she could care less what I look like or that the towel's perfect or, any of that stuff that really invites and allows you to just kind of be with whatever is going on in the moment. And so I don't think that you have to have children, but I think if you have children in your life in any way, or even a person, many of us just know friends or adults who have sort of subscribe to, I'm going to do what makes me happy or what brings me joy. And that can give you permission, right? It's like you seeing them empowers you. And I love that. I love that I get to see my little superhero run around, and for a few minutes, I'm a superhero too. And, that's not something that most people who know me would think that that's something I'm comfortable with.
Mhm.
So yes, I absolutely love it. And even I'm thinking this morning for our audience, we had a staff meeting and one of our colleagues' son was there. We're working from home. This is extraordinary circumstances. And so we were all, I mean, if you could have looked around that Zoom room, we were all smiling and laughing. And our colleague was very apologetic. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But her son was having a ball, laughing, and mommy, look at this, and playing, and just there's something about not being tethered to other people's um not even expectations,
Expectation.
yeah, expectations, but also opinions, right? Like
Mhm.
he didn't care. He's
Mhm.
like, I want to play with this toy. And granted, yes, there needs to be, yeah, of course, lots of times we have to, because of what we might be doing and the structure that life has provided, we have to kind of keep those things at bay. But I thought it was more telling that our colleague was feeling judged maybe or just self-conscious, where we weren't experiencing that at all. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I looked across the Zoom
Yeah.
call and there were big bright smiles
Yeah.
and laughter, and we weren't at all concerned about
Yeah. Yeah. It's in those small wonderful moments and the permissions and yeah, and if I think of the greatest moments of joy, it can be just the laughing over the silliest thing with people, or even like you've said during this time, it has been a ray to see someone's child come into Zoom, even if they weren't expecting that. And how I feel on this end, I don't feel bothered, or it's more like this is wonderful, a wonderful lightning, or maybe someone has a pet animal and they come in and they lighten it, or you can see the person lightens within it of when their pet comes and they're sort of having a moment with the pet or their child comes, and you can see that lightning. And so that can just be really really a wonderful moment, and just again that little brief moment of joy of something that can be a little bit different for the space we might be occupying, and And then I think it's important to tune into that, to notice, okay, this is a moment of joy, because that's also what we've been talking about, is that these are moments, and if you can remember, if you can tune in, if you can be in the moment with that, it can make it easier to sustain some of that feeling and carry that inside, or to recall some of that, to find it again. And I think we've talked about things that short circuit that, or disconnect from some of that,
Yeah.
in ways.
Absolutely. And one thing you shared with me that I think I've shared in this podcast space, so bear with me if y'all have heard this before, but when I was really back in the fall, kind of hitting a wall around, like, just kind of raging against the machine of this pandemic, and oh my God, really complaining. And that's not my natural state. And I was sharing with Anthony, and you encouraged me to get out and to walk. And I can't say it enough how helpful that is sometimes, to just get out of your current space. Because when I'm walking and I'm looking around and I'm noticing the trees, the other houses, the other kids or families or cars, I'm not in my head, and I'm not complaining, and I'm not thinking about all of the other tasks. Nothing has changed, in the sense of I still have things that, have to be accomplished, and meetings to have to attend, but I feel more refreshed and able to engage more fully when I get out. So, I mean, that's a little bit harder now that it's cold, and my blood has thinned since moving to the South, because I can't tolerate the cold like I used to. But I will tell you, if you are experiencing any type of, just feeling over it. I know this week I've done some phone screens and some intakes with people who are just kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, it's the second wave maybe of this pandemic. And they're just really feeling like, yeah, stuck. I would say maybe try movement, try getting out, try walking, and just try it, because I wasn't convinced when he told me. I was like, oh, but I did it a couple days in a row, and my mood was noticeably lifted, because there's just something about, and goes to what you were saying about mindfulness and all of those things, and how that's really important, and what we know about the brain and what gets released when we kind of move and work out. But I wasn't walking at like a super fast pace. It was just being able to get out, be attentive to something else other than this screen and this Zoom and all of those things. So I want to encourage someone who might be listening and feeling maybe stuck, or feeling like, I'm not feeling like myself. I'm more complaining. I'm more irritable. Try some physical movement if that's at all possible, and safe for you, because it really made a difference for me. And it got me back to where I was my normal self. And then I was able to problem solve some more long-term ways to not let it get that bad again.
Yeah, and I think even it may require thinking outside the box a little bit, creativity, but like you're saying, movement, out your door, even, if you want to drive places, this could be a time to explore. And so if you haven't been to a downtown Durham, a downtown Raleigh, go down there and walk, and kind of experience what that you can do that safely a lot of the time, and be and still do that now. And so it might take thinking of that, being in nature. And you're right, it's cold, but there are coats and there are hats and there are gloves, and you can. And so I'm just saying, I found for myself, it may just be thinking outside the box in a certain way, or maybe thinking, like you said, missing travel. And not that you won't completely miss that, but what do you love in that? And are there ways to still get pieces of that? So one of the things I love about travel is how it activates my curiosity, my learning. And so there are ways I can fulfill that in certain ways, and still get little pieces of what might be fulfilling. And there might even be ways to do that remotely, with all of the things they've set up, of, take a virtual tour of the Louvre, so it may just require thinking outside the box in some ways, but it's possible. And I think one thing we're learning in the pandemic, this isn't something that occurred to me until we were on this podcast and you were talking, but about thinking about the little things. But I think that's some of what's made this so hard, is the things we didn't tune into that might have been sources of joy or helped relieve, like just what it could mean to go out to dinner. It doesn't have to be the fanciest thing ever. It doesn't, but just to go to your spot, maybe a favorite spot with some people you like, and to get to do that. And now when that's harder and disrupted, now it has more meaning than it may have then. You may not have noticed it. You may not have mentioned it to anybody. You may not have tuned into
Right.
what that meant. But now, so I think this is a time maybe again to reassess and notice how much the small things builds up to be some of the bigger thing of joy, of happiness, of a lightening, of contentment, of fulfillment, meaning those sorts of things. And I think that that's some of what's made the pandemic very hard, is things we never had to think about
Right.
are now not there. But also, does that give us a chance to realize we took things for granted, or we didn't tune in as much as we might in the future to that moment, instead of being on the phone
Mhm.
texting when you're with other people? Maybe you could be in that moment, and what might that mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think yes, yes, yes to all of that. And as you were talking earlier, I thought about, you talked about kind of having to think outside the box. And it made me think about how creativity during this time can be something that could really be a coping skill. We have a group called #NoFilter that is all about creativity and ways to use creativity to really help you cope, whether you are already a creative person and that's just what you do, or you're looking for ways to kind of get that spark lit for creativity. I think this could be the group for you. So please, if you want to know more, go to our website, unc.caps.edu, and click on groups, and you can get more information. You can also click a button and be connected with the group facilitator and get more information. Because I think that the truth is we're going to be in this pandemic for a little bit longer, right? Like hopefully not much longer, but at least a little bit longer. And I think that when I see people who are coping well, and this is no judgment on anyone because we're all doing what we got to do. Like, let me be clear, we're all doing what we have to do. But certain people have been able to kind of hook into that creativity and use this time to do all sorts of things. In some ways, we're doing that right through this podcast.
yes,
But there are lots of other creative things. Maybe your thing is a podcast if you're listening and you want to get started. Or maybe it's writing or drawing or creating in some other way. So this group is going to be a group of other folks who can help you with that process and also share, if you're feeling stuck, ways that you can tap into. We're all creative beings. We just need some inspiration sometimes to tap into it. So I wanted to kind of give a shout out to #NoFilter because I think that could be the group that could really help. Especially, I'm thinking of folks coming in saying they feel stuck. They don't know how to kind of get out of this rut. It's Groundhog's Day every day and so check this group out. It could be the group that just changes things for you and helps you cope a little bit better during this time.
yeah, and I really appreciate you mentioning that group. I'm involved with that group, and I think what you're saying is right on. And also that people can maybe hear creativity and they think, oh, I can't draw, I can't. And it's not design, it's not this idea of that what you would do needs to end up in sort of the Metropolitan Museum of Art or something like that. It's not at that level, but that's again the judgments that can come in, and this idea of maybe the way we don't let that child part of us, or we don't engage, because like you said, all of us can be creative in certain ways, and there can be a lot of different ways to do that. And again, it's not about performance, or that I have to like give this to something and be judged. It's for you often, and can you activate the creativity there? And sometimes creativity is just thinking just slightly outside the box. I think a lot of people have started. So we didn't do anything revolutionary by saying we would like to start a podcast, but this is still different than what we were doing before. So I had to think a little bit outside to think, what could we do that's a little bit different, but still do what we value, which is to connect.
Mhm.
And so that's what this can represent. And so I think that group you mentioned, or just people doing things, would want them to hear that's how creativity, again, it's not just about a product that then somehow other people are seeing and judging as so amazing. And so it's much smaller than that, and it can be for you. And there could be a host of ways to be creative, and some of that is just about tapping into your emotions and your thoughts in a different way, a way that might just be not be verbalizing,
Right.
and about thinking maybe just slightly out of box, or doing something slightly that maybe some part of you says is silly or you haven't done before, like pulling out a coloring book. Or
Mhm.
so there could be a lot of ways to be creative. So yeah, really appreciate you mentioning that. Wanted to check in and see if there are other things you wanted to speak to about what are giving you joy, bringing you joy now and in these moments or in recent times.
Yeah, yes, yes. Thank you for checking back in. Um, I think I've always, I was thinking earlier what you were talking about like little children and not being tethered to kind of others' opinions, or maybe I said that, but I think games, I think playing, I think that, yeah, I think I want to talk about play in general and how, there is a sort of sanctioned way that we might get some of those needs met that children do, and that's through games. I love board games. My family is a board game family. They're a little bit more competitive than I am, so it's really I just want to be
That's your
around
story and
y'all.
you're sticking to it.
Yeah, I mean, they play for keeps, and it's like this isn't this serious, guys. But and I think that that's a way that I have definitely, and I wouldn't have thought of that, Anthony, until kind of asking me to reflect on, lots of Scrabble tournaments, and even us as a committee, we played Scattergories a couple times, and that was really fun. And so I think that games, both kind of card games and board games based, but also even I love like Sudoku puzzles, and I love just kind of, yeah, things that allow me to kind of tap into that creativity in a maybe more sanctioned socially way. So that's really got me through. And it's also, as I'm talking, I'm getting excited about thinking like this weekend I could pull the Scrabble board back out. Like that's great. That's a small thing I could do that would bring a lot of joy. So yeah, I think that that's something we do. I know your family has traditionally had like a game day after Christmas, which I think is a great idea. I want my family to start doing that. And so we don't, excuse me, do it usually around the holidays, but they'll fall together these kind of random times where if we're all together, someone might break out a new game that they got, or a deck of cards, and then we're off and running. So, but I think being a little bit more planful about it could be maybe fun, setting up tournaments, or just little like silly things like that could be really really cool. And even we could do it virtually and kind of all be on a call or something. So you've really got the wheel spinning in me thinking about like, oh yeah, I really do like doing that, and I don't often think of it as creative, but it is a way to kind of get some of those kind of child playful needs met. Yeah.
I'm smiling so much listening to you because one, you could hang with the Teasdale family for sure. There's an enjoyment of games. Some of the games you mentioned, there's a lot of enjoyment around. So that's really wonderful. And you actually brought back a really great memory for me, a really a great moment of joy in the pandemic. And again, it's interesting how this is a tough time, but how it can also present opportunities. So several one of my friends that I am more in contact with organized a game night virtually for friends, people we knew from graduate school. So some of the people on the Zoom were people that I hadn't seen, talked to in years. And it was just so much fun to reconnect and play some of these silly games virtually, things that, you maybe log in on your phone and then you're doing something on the screen and it's this interactive electronic, but just that experience of getting together. And I'm in North Carolina and some of them are in California and they're in Maryland and they're all over the country. And this is a thing, a gathering that wouldn't have happened outside the pandemic. So isn't that interesting? Even in a hard time, there still was an opportunity and there was a motivation to get together because of the feeling of disconnection that is happening a lot of the time. And so I was glad you mentioned, because it also triggered that memory for me of something that was a really wonderful moment in this pandemic to get to see people again and reconnect in that way and have that sort of thing around the games. And the games almost became incidental, but then they're also sort of very silly and funny and just really nice to be in that space. So yeah, thank you for triggering that memory. And it just,
That
yeah,
sounds fun. That sounds like a lot of fun. Kudos to whoever organized that for you all. Our graduate class also organized a get together, but we didn't think to do games. So maybe the next time we do that, games will be involved. But you're right. I think it's what we hope you all are hearing is that, you know, this pandemic is hard. Nobody is in any way denying that or minimizing. And I think it's and there are lots of opportunities to tap into joy, to experience, to step outside the box, as Anthony said, to do things that maybe you would have never done, or people that you care about your cohort members and you're in your graduate school, but you're spread around. So you might not have had the opportunity to connect to them in this way. And again, we just hope that, you know, this is a way, and I hope, again, if you're struggling or you want some more support around, how do I do that? What would that look like to even step outside of the box, you know, that you consider the hashtag no filter group, because I think that's a great place to start, where it'll be, you know, generating ideas, and you'll have a lot of support around that encouragement. Like Anthony's saying, it's not for judgment. You're not producing a product to be scrutinized and judged. It's to tap into that creative piece. And I think a side effect of that is going to be better coping, because you have something that, you know, you're looking forward to, that's tapping into parts of yourself that many of us don't really tap into all that time, which is that childlike playfulness that all of us have. But as adults, we kind of learn to zip up a little bit. So yeah, I mean, this, not that we're ending here, but I just, you know, that was such a great idea that your graduate school did, that I wanted to kind of highlight that, but also say that those are the kinds of things that this group could help you to arrange or to facilitate or to sort of brainstorm around the ins and outs of.
Yeah, for sure. And now I need to reach out to this friend missing them. She's really great at organizing things. First person that got me into escape rooms and some
Okay.
other some other really cool things. So I think I need to reach out. But yeah, there's just, yeah, I think again, seeing those opportunities, and like you said, with the group could be one way, and we're gonna look at a lot of different outlets that one might deem creative within the group. And this isn't just sort of, I mean, play is important in all of these things, but if for the people that may go to their head a little more, there's research behind all of this, the how play connects to wellness and mental health, writing and how that connects to more positive mental health, resilience sort of things. All of these things have been well documented. Physical movement, all
Mhm.
of these things have been well documented. So if you're someone who, yes, needs that piece of things, go to the head. All of these things are well researched, things that we know are very helpful for people. And so again, it's opening up possibilities and being able to, instead of say I can or I don't do that, maybe
Mm,
there's a possibility within it to discover, and again take some of that judgment away. Maybe that judgment we developed over time, because again we talked about how children can often be sort of fully open, fully hearted, and then over time as adults we absorb all these messages and we can lose touch with that. But another hallmark of at times therapy is helping people reconnect to the inner child, and because that's also where there may have been a lot of pain and hurt, but also that child's there to play and to open up the idea of new experience. And that's a big thing for kids is new experience and exploration versus being as fear based as adults are. Adults can be more oriented to fear and don't do that
mm,
because of, and children are, give me, let me have the things, what's next. And so there's a different openness that we can cultivate by tuning into that creativity, or if you like, that inner child part.
yeah. Yeah, I almost feel like I want to challenge our listeners to do something play based, you know, after listening to this. And again, that could look like a lot of different things depending. For me, that's breaking out the board games, right? And letting that kind of, you know, feed me in that way. But, you know, I think that in these times, we sometimes do need, I was so happy when you brought up this topic, because joy and happiness and what connects you, what makes you feel good, we don't spend enough time there. We, especially if you're like me and watch the news and I need to get off CNN, and I can get in that space of, oh my gosh, woe is me, the world. And again, all things really valid. I certainly don't want to misrepresent what's happening in the world, and there's some really big things going on. But sometimes I need that reminder of balance, of the and are there things that you can do day to day, or even moment to moment, that you can sort of slow down a little bit and turn inward and notice. I liked earlier how you said noticing, but being present and notice. So I don't know if you're with me in initiating this challenge, but I really want to challenge our listeners to tap into that and step outside the box, as Anthony said. And that's going to look different, of course, where you are in life and what you do and what you find fun, and joyful. But we want to sort of cultivate joy. That's our directive to you, is do something that helps you tap a little bit more into joy, and the things that you enjoy doing.
No, I think you're right in line. All I'm thinking is you're telling people to just stop it. Just stop it with just stop it with thinking that they can't play, that they can't be in that child part of them. They can't indulge that. And that might seem simple, but again, I was sharing yesterday in the group that I do, Brother to Brother, that I've been in specifically men's groups before, where the men have talked about that it's not just the hard things that they're not sharing in that group and in their life. They are hesitant to share the passions because they think to themselves, other people won't think this is okay for me to like and will judge this. And so they don't even share their passions. And so not only may there be a hiding or a holding back of the struggles, but there's a holding back of the joys too. And so somehow it's not okay to be into video games. It's not okay to be into sports. It's not okay to be whatever it is. I have been in those spaces and people have talked about holding back on the things that they're passionate about, that bring them joy, that they do like. And so I am right there with you of that challenge to play. And while it might seem simple, I find that sometimes that can be the hardest thing for people to do. And so yeah, you're telling people exactly what we have that segment for. Just stop it, very, very directly. Just stop believing that that's not okay for you, that that's not okay to play. And that could look so many different ways. And don't worry about looking silly, and don't worry about, because whoever's probably watching isn't going to ever see you again. So just just go for it. So yeah, I think that's right in line with our just stop it segment and your encouragement, your challenge for people to play, and to that, hopefully within that, to be creative, think outside the box and figure out what that could look like for them. But to just play, and it doesn't have to be like I'm playing a 2.5 hour basketball game. It can play, any of this stuff can be, it could be 5 minutes, 10, but to play. And I join your challenge, and I think it goes right in line with us saying just stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And even you sharing, thank you so much. And you sharing what, the brother to brother group, kind of what you all share, I think is going to be a topic I want us to put a pin in to revisit. And that's the idea of gender boxes, right? And what is the cost and consequence of being put into a box based on your gender identity, and what that's like. So I'm saying that to our listeners so that they can hold us accountable, because I think that's a conversation that goes both ways, that women experience that as well. But just hearing you talk about brother, I never considered that. And so yeah, hopefully them sharing their passions, that's a place that they can go to talk about not just the struggles, but also the things that you're really excited about, or that you're passionate about, that you want to talk more about, and that we are here to care and listen. So as we wrap up, I always like to just remind folks, especially if this is your first time listening, if you're a UNC student or postdoc that want some support, to please reach out to us. You can got over 20 something groups. So no matter who you are or what you present with or what you might be going through, there's going to be a group for you. And so we encourage you to get in contact with us. Let us support you. Let us kind of talk to you through some of the options. So you don't have to ride this, not only this pandemic, but life out alone. But certainly in these times in particular, we want you to know we're here to support you, and our doors are open virtually. And yeah, and so, I just want to just do that plug for caps@unc.edu.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for encouraging people with that. And thank you very much to listeners and viewers for joining us. And we hope that you will tune into the things bringing you joy. And so this has been Feeling Seen, a UNC Caps podcast.